Everyone, welcome to today's edition of AM Minnesota. Of course, we want you to be an informed voter when you hit the election booth November 8th or before then with our new absentee voting without an excuse. We checked, of course, with the folks that are in charge of the election, and a few days back they had over 3,000 absentee ballots already cast 3 weeks before the election. So unfortunately for those people who already voted, you don't get an opportunity to hear the candidates. Here over the course of this week and next, the candidates for mayor will be with us on Monday. Janet Viscomi and Kevin Varachek, who are currently our Faribault City Council members. So obviously there'll be a seat open there when one of them gets elected. On the show today, John Rowan and George Wickstrom Jr. Next week, I know Royal Ross has already confirmed he'll be with us on Friday. I just got off the phone seconds before we hit the airwaves, and it does sound like Adam Gibbons will also be with us next Friday, and we're hoping that the other candidates as well will join us on Friday of next week. If not, we'll have another day next week that we can have other Faribault City Council candidates on. But let's get to know our guests this morning. I'll start with you, George. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
I just need you closer to that mic if I could,
Okay,
please.
good morning.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So what prompted you to decide to run for Faribault City Council?
Well, I've been active in many things up until the last couple of years. I've got time. I've been a resident of Faribault for 51 years. I think I've got some experiences that would be helpful to council. And there's two things that I'm concerned about that I think should be attended. And I have no axe to grind with the city council, but I am concerned about the assimilation of our ethnic groups into the town. And I've been working with the Faribault Diversity Coalition to some extent there. I've met with some of those people many times. In fact, I've gone to many of their businesses. So I'm trying to work in that area. The other thing is that I'm concerned about economic conditions in our country and how they may affect our local area, because over 40% of our revenue comes from intergovernmental transfers, and if those transfers are reduced, what can the city do? I think we need to be proactive and look at that issue. And I have a lot of information. I could spend the rest of this program talking about economic issues that are totally different than what we're hearing from our legislators.
Sure.
So those are my two major concerns, and that should do it.
How about you, John? You're running for re-election. Why?
Well, the first time I ran, I was concerned about the lack of money spent on public safety. I feel in the last 4 years we've done a good job on getting our department adequately staffed. This time around, I'm running on the idea that we need to continue with accountability. One of the things that bugs me is when government makes regulations that aren't meaningful or simply can't be enforced. One of the things that we have worked on in the last 4 years is the crime-free multi-housing registration. And it's a step in the right direction, but it's not the end-all, fix-all. We got to continue moving forward. A couple of problems that I see in Faribault right now is a lack of housing, market rate housing for the millennials. There's a lot of subsidized housing which many don't qualify for, and there's a lot of elderly housing, but you have this whole market that isn't being served. Government can't do it, but we can have the conversations with the private sector to get it done.
All right. We've just got a moment left before our opening market report, so we can't really dive into too many issues. I will say, if you have a question, just text us at 507-838-5233. 507-838-5233. I find texting to make things much more smooth on the show. We just read the text question, we go right there. We don't have to deal with the phone or anything. So if you could text us your question, it would be greatly appreciated. We can get more questions in that way too, I think. 507-838-5233 is the number to text your question to. 507-838-5233.
And outdated technology. Not to mention teacher layoffs. With less investments in the all-day kindergarten that would ensure our kids a great start. Since opportunity starts with a good education, we ought to be looking out for our public schools. But that's not what we get with Rich Draheim. Paid advertisement. Paid for by a...
Hey, Minnesota, we appreciate John Rowan, George Wickstrom Jr. coming in today. I know Royal Ross is confirmed for next Friday. I do believe Adam Gibbons will be joining us Friday. Tom Spooner, Steve Underdahl, hopefully will all be able to join us. Then if not, we do have a couple of other days next week that we could do a program that we'll do. On Monday, by the way, the candidates for mayor will be here together. That's right. Jana Viscomi, Kevin Voracek will be in this studio together on Monday morning. And you can text your questions for the candidates for mayor as well, which brings me to my first question. Unless, John, did you finish up?
Yeah, go ahead, Gordy.
My first question deals with the makeup of the city council. Obviously, both Ms. Viscomi and Mr. Voracek are members of the council, which means you'll have an open seat on election day. Technically, I realize that they don't take office until the next month. But what are your thoughts? Should the council appoint someone from the community at large? Should they go down the roster and take the next highest vote recipient in the election? I'll start with you, John.
Well, I think logically it would make sense to take the next in succession. I think the bigger issue is it isn't going to be a decision for the existing council to make. So there will be one meeting where we will be short one member, and it's going to be the next council that will have to make the decision. I have not spoken to our attorney about this, but what I've heard internally is that traditionally, if my information is correct, they appoint somebody, and the person they appoint has to agree not to run. Now, whether that's factual or not, I don't know. And until we hear from our attorney with a formal statement on that, that's as much as I know about it.
Okay. How about you, George?
I have pretty much the same opinion. If we've got an open seat and we've had an election, I think the person that was next electable after those that were assigned to the council should be appointed.
Okay, but that was different than what?
No, I don't think so. I think if we have 3 people elected and we need to appoint one more person, the fourth one in terms of vote getting would be the one I would choose. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think we see eye to eye on this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because you said you were going to go by the city charter, right?
Well, you asked me what my opinion was. My opinion may not be the same as what the law dictates. So, if the decision was solely mine, I agree with George. We just pick the next in line. It's cleaner that way.
Okay, and if it doesn't, then maybe the law should be changed.
Right, and we have found this in the last 4 years. There are many instances where the city council's hands are tied, and these battles need to be taken up to the legislature. This Genio thing that we just finished up with was a year and a half in the making, and a lot of the residents feel like they didn't get a fair share. And what I've said meeting after meeting is our hands were tied. As you're voting for your state reps, you need to ask them the hard-hitting questions. What can you do to fix this? Because right now our hands are shackled.
So the council there's nothing they could do in that situation.
I believe Jana Viscomi tried every legal option to change the direction of that, and at the end of the day, court decisions did not allow it to go the direction that the residents wanted.
George, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, the facts are that the Genio plant has been there a long time. The people that have moved in there, the plant was there when they moved in, and they should be aware that the business is not going to go away. Unfortunately, that there's been major changes since some of them have moved in, and it's been to their disadvantage. I think the council and many people were sympathetic to them. Obviously, I've been to a number of those meetings since I decided to throw my hat in the ring to be elected. And I couldn't help but notice that the people who were being affected, the homeowners, were not skilled in negotiating, and they came in with a pretty adversarial approach, and they lose some of their sympathy, I guess. But nevertheless, I think the handwriting's on the wall that the decision had to go the way it was. I think there's some things that can be done at this point that is going to be helpful to them. One option, obviously, is to have Genio buy the whole property. At some point, they probably could. It's not that big a deal for a large corporation to do that. But then if they do that, then they need to think about what is the next step. Who are the next people who are affected? Well, that's an opportunity to put up a big buffer zone and solve that problem, because they can put a fence of some kind, a shrubbery, whatever, and pretty much eliminate that problem, because the problem is going to be there for those 16 homes that are affected until they either move out or somebody or Jenny buys it. So I think at this point the decision was, the handwriting was on the wall, and it had to go the way it did.
We do have a texted question, and I'll start with George on this one. What is Faribault's greatest accomplishment in the last year?
Well, I think we've done quite a bit in terms of trying to create an esprit de corps, or a good image of Faribault. Rotary Club has been very active through Dick Houston in putting up the murals. I think that's a good thing, and I've contributed to that through the Rotary Club, and also we restored that clock, which is also a good thing. We're emphasizing restoring downtown area, which is also an important area to keep our heritage open. I think it's very important for any community to have things going for it that ties us to the past, because it does create an esprit de corps. And anything we can do in that area is important. I think now I've been involved in the Virtues Project, and that with the things that the Rotary Club is doing is a big opportunity to create unity within our town. I had 70 registrations for a 2-day conference in August 2nd and 3rd, of which we had 68 attend, and there were 3 of us that put that together. That would be Cindy Diesner, Kim Anderson, and me, or I should say. And so we had a pretty good response to that, and we're moving forward with that. And I've also done some things with TPT. So I've been invited to some of their dinners and so forth, and I've been in contact with them. I'm giving them information on what we've done in the Virtues Project, and maybe we can get some publicity that way. So they're trying to keep Faribault on the map and with a positive twist.
John, Faribault's greatest accomplishment in the last year?
I think the expansion of the Faribault Foods out in the industrial park, filling that up. Also, we've got Parker Cole starting construction on a new building for their business, and Dr. Ritchie is putting in that elderly home. And these are big projects. These are gonna benefit Faribault for the next 20 to 40 years.
Again, the phone number to call, text your question. It was a good question, 507-838-5233. 507-838-5233. The only thing I won't do is take any personal attack type questions. I want to stick to the issues, if that makes sense.
This
is not going to be a Trump-Clinton type thing.
Absolutely
not. No, and quite honestly, he's a good guy.
Yeah, we all are.
Yeah, I don't think anybody running is doing it for nefarious reasons. We're very blessed at this level.
Yeah.
I think you're right. South Interchange, down by Kmart.
Yes.
The half interchange.
Correct.
It's been here, well, before I moved here, almost 30 years ago. That's been sitting that way. Should we finish it?
I would love to finish it, but as we found out from, it's either County Road 8 or County Road 9, you got to get the okay from the Minnesota Department of Transportation to do that, and the feds. Lots of money and lots of studies have to occur. And if they won't give us the County Road 8, County Road 9 interchange, there's little chance they'll give us that one. And it isn't just a matter of, let's just do it. If we don't have their blessing, we can't do it. It's their road, which is really too bad, because we could certainly change the dynamic of that area.
Well, I think it would build up, don't you, if we had a full interchange out there?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, George?
Well, it certainly would improve the access to that area, but the concern I have would be right back to who's got the skin in the game. If the Faribault area has to pay for a lot of it, we better know where our money's coming from. This is state, and I'm not sure, I don't think federal's involved in this, is it? Just mostly the state. But in any event, I don't think Faribault should stick its neck out very far to put money into that unless we know we're going to have the money.
Well, might want to do a little more research on this. I know Lakeville, you know where Super Target is in Lakeville? They did that on their own. The state was not going to give the money for it, and they said, okay, then we'll do it on our own.
Right, but they still had to get blessing from the state.
You don't think the state would give you a blessing?
That's completely up to them. Remember, the interstate highway system belongs to the feds.
Right, but to complete that interchange, I mean...
Politics is a strange animal, Gordy. What should be so basic, a lot of times isn't.
Here's the thing, Gordy. The farther away a decision is made, the less likely that decision is going to be appropriate. If you have decisions made in Washington, D.C. or St. Paul that affect us locally, many times those decisions don't make sense. And you see that over and over again. And
you can say that again.
Yeah, and so this is also a concern. The closer the decision is to, I've given a book out. It's called The Best Damn Ship in the Navy. It's your ship. It's by a naval destroyer captain. He talks about how he completely changed the demeanor of a ship. He went into be installed, and the captain that was retiring before him, the crew hissed and booed when he left with his family. And when he was installed, he said, "This is not going to happen to me." And so he met with every one of the 310 crew members on that ship, took files on every one of them, and one of his comments was, he says, "If you have any ideas on how you can improve your job, you let me know, we'll get it done." The idea there that the person doing the job knows more about that job than anybody, and that's part of the philosophy we need to have in any organization we have. Always get down to the people who are doing the job, and again, part of the decision, and develop respect and good communications in that area. It's critical.
I think John may have answered this question earlier, but another listener texts in and wants to know if we have adequate staffing in the police and fire departments.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were to ask the police chief, I think he'd like one more. But we have had the best staffing we've had probably since before 2005 as far as numbers and the quality of officers. Very proud of the department.
I'm not really qualified to answer that at this point. I've not been on the council. I haven't been involved in those decisions. I'd have to respect John's opinion there.
Sure, but there is a number that the council has, right?
Yeah.
Correct, yep.
That they want to be at?
Yes.
And they're at that number, you're saying?
They're one short of that number.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I know Andy Bolin. I know that's what he said, and I'd have to respect what they're saying at this point.
What is the number?
Off the top of my head, I believe it's 35.
Okay. And the fire department likewise?
Yep, Dusty and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Staffing is very adequate over there.
See, there's a good point. See, John is in touch with the department heads, and the councils need to stay in touch with the department heads, and the department heads need to go down to their group leaders, and the group leaders need to get down to the people doing the job. So, see, if you can get that chain of command and that level of communication, I think a lot of good things can come of that.
We have good infrastructure here in Faribault, you think? Our streets are adequate? Do we need some improvements in those areas?
I think Tim Murray does a good job. That's one of the things that I was surprised to learn, the life cycle of a road from the day you build it. Sorry, I'm getting over cold. The 15-20 year mark where you do your first seal coat, then you do your overlay rebuild, and then finally you go through that process again, and then so we try to get 50 years out of each road. And there's no roads that I think are really bad like there were in the late 80s. We used to have some terrible roads.
Well, it's a constant problem. You can't repair them all at once, and there's always going to be a need to repair roads. And in some cases, they have to be. Look what they're doing over on, was it First Street and Second? Is it? I think it's Second or First Street and First Avenue, tearing everything apart. Well, I don't know all the details of that, but we have to do that once in a while. The Second Street bridge, or Second Avenue bridge, is going to be going down at some point in time too. And these are big expenses. Look at Tippy-Tonka. We've got a huge repair bill going on right now that was discussed at the city council. I think the number was something like $700,000. You know, you're talking big bucks. And all this stuff is part of the program. You got to have funding coming in constantly to keep these things up, because they're always wearing down. There's always going to be a road, just like fixing a house. There's always something to do in the house. There's always something to do in the town. So
yeah,
it has to be in our budget, and that's where we have to be very careful. That's what my concern is. How much of this money comes in? I don't know this at this point, but how much of this money comes from externally, from intergovernmental transfers to Faribault. Some of the roads, like we got 4th Street, which is a state road. That's in combination. I don't know what kind of funding the city had with that, but we've got a mixed amount of funding from different groups, and we want to be sure that Faribault can hold up its end.
The number to text again is 507-838-5233. I do have a listener wondering about snow removal. Is it adequate in our community? I'll start with you, George.
Well, I think it's adequate. Sometimes you get these big bulges of snow, and what can you do? You just have to bear with it. You can only do so much. If a snow crew is something that it has to be sitting there to one side to be available, and if they don't have that, if there's no need. For example, we could go through a snowless winter. Then we've got people that aren't employed on that part, and I don't know how that fits into the budget either, because what do these folks do in the wintertime if there's no snow removal? I don't know that. But during the summertime, they've got road repairs and so forth. And so I guess I think so far it's been adequate. They get the snow in the middle of the road, and they have the equipment to auger it into the trucks, and they get it away pretty fast and dump it near the river, and it's clean. I think they do a pretty good job.
John?
Well, this is where I'm going to disagree. This is one of the other issues I ran on 4 years ago. The previous city administrator had traditionally told them not to put the blades down onto the pavement because of cost. And one thing I've told my staff, I will never deny a blade on a snowplow. It's a consumable. You need to put that blade down. So what I found over the last 4 years is, if the city is proactive, in other words, they see the snowstorm coming and they get the guys out there, they can keep on top of it. If it happens on a Saturday and they wait till Monday morning, we've already lost the battle. We get those ruts that freeze in, and that's an administration issue. I mean, the guys on the front lines are doing what they're told, and I think we can do better.
Well, I only got a couple minutes left in the show. This show runs too fast some days. And what I'd like to do is get each of you to tell our listeners why they should vote for you on Faribault City Council. We started, I think, with George at the beginning, right? So we'll start with John here.
Well, I think the reason you should vote for me is I'm a no-nonsense guy. I'm not afraid to ask the hard-hitting questions. I demand results. I believe in accountability. I am for limited government. One of the things I've fought is I don't believe that government should be taking private dollars and giving them to private groups. I don't think that's a function of government. And I will continue to work hard for the people of Faribault. I do want to continue working on the housing situation in Faribault, and hopefully you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Well, I would like the people to consider me for city council. I've had some experience in some of these things, not in Faribault, but in another, down in Roselle, Illinois, actually. I was on the planning commission down there for a couple of years. I was on the school board for 6.5 years, president for 5.5, and we solved some pretty iffy issues. When I was voted president, it was a complete surprise to me. There were the 7-person council. 3 of the people who were for the superintendent thought he walked on water. The other one thought he was the devil's advocate. And I came to a meeting, and they had gotten together, and Cody Gates makes a vote, or a motion, that George Wickstrom should be the president. I'm the youngest guy on the board. I'm 28 years old, and everybody voted for me. So they had this thing set up, and I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, we got through it. We got cooperation, and so I think I've got the ability to work with people, and I'm a broad thinker, and I look at the issues. I always try to get the information first, and look at the options when any decision is coming up. So I think that I've been in business in town for over 42 years. I've been director of manufacturing for a nutting truck company until they were leaving town, and so I was in a leadership and management position with. So I've got some experience I think is helpful, and I would appreciate people who consider me for counsel.
Yeah, I could maybe sneak in one more text question, because they did wrap up their summaries there early. 507-838-5233 if you have another question. I was going to ask about Interstate 35 development. We talked about refurbishing the downtown area. You look at Owatonna and what they've done in terms of economic development along I-35. That's a gold mine out there, don't you think, John?
Yeah, absolutely. But all that land is privately owned. That's private business transactions.
I-35 to the north? Yeah.
To the south, the north, all over I-35, yes.
Yeah, well, I think we need to look at developing land. You have a couple of issues there. One is what's available internally. We've got the industrial park to the north. We're done. Okay.
Oh man, no, not really. I think I'm going to run over just a little tad here, if I can, because we have a question about developing the river area here. What is Faribault? What do you think about developing the river area in Faribault?
I think it would be an excellent thing. As long as we can avoid the flooding of it, I think that's the one issue. But I think river areas can be very nice to have as a park area. The problem again is, can we afford it? Who's going to do it? And what kind of development should it be? Well, I've been on you go to the river walk down in Texas. Is and you can have types of businesses, restaurants, and things that are not put not ambience and good atmosphere. I think that'd be another drawing to the town.
Yeah, in a perfect world, it would be a great idea. But people, our younger folks, have to understand 2 points. Faribault used to have an incinerator, and we dumped the ash there. And we used to have a dump, and we dumped stuff there. We don't know what kind of material exists under that area. And as George said, who's going to pay to clean it up? The feds are very clear on a couple things. If you develop contaminated land, you have to clean it up. And we should clean it up. That should be our civic duty. But that's a hefty price.
One other point there, Gordy, is that I think that river has been moved since the.
Oh yeah.
It was farther to the west, and so we don't. Yeah, I think John's entirely right. We don't know what's under that. We had that at Nutting when we bought some property on the up of Prairie Avenue. And we also dump paint in there. So people buy that property. They don't know what the previous owner's done with it. So that's a good point.
Yeah, thanks guys. Again, the show wasn't long enough today. Certainly appreciate your coming in, and we want everybody to get out and vote on November 8th or before then absentee if you so desire, right?
Yeah, sure. And I wish John well, and I hope whoever gets it is deserving, I think.
Sure.
Yep. Good luck to you, George.
Maybe both will make it,
yeah. Yep, and thanks again, Gordy, for hosting this.
Yeah.
Again, George Wickstrom Jr., John Rowan, our guests today on AM Minnesota. We did run over a tad. You're in tune to KDHL AM Faribault, Minnesota. We now join ABC News in progress.